And to say that it destroyed my life in an instant is honestly an understatement. It
Mm.
destroyed every aspect of who I was, my identity, my values, the illusion of a life I had constructed for myself up to that point, the illusion of a childhood, the
Mm.
illusion of a father, the
Mm.
illusion of everything that I consider to be important to me up to that point. Now, something happened right after I started to get those flashbacks, and is that after fighting a long time, I finally surrender into acceptance.
Mm.
And acceptance is one of the most important aspects of healing.
Welcome to the Brave Woman Podcast. I'm your host, Tanya Lynn, founder of Sistership Circle and author of Open Your Heart and The Art of Leading Circle. I'm the mother of 2 girls, an 8 on the Enneagram, aka the Challenger, happily married to my business partner, Brent, love connecting with nature, and have put in well over 10,000 hours circling with other women. On this podcast, we will explore how to embody the brave woman so that you can take action on your dreams and desires, unapologetically speak your truth, and live life on your own terms. Grab a seat and a cup of tea, and let's get started. Welcome back, sisters, to the Brave Woman Podcast. I am so excited for today's conversation with the amazing Melissa Osorio. I got that right. I am living in a Spanish-speaking country, so I should be able to pronounce Spanish last names. Welcome, Melissa. This is going to be amazing to have you here today.
Yeah, I'm very excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So, I would love for you to start with your story and just like who are you as it relates to this conversation today around trauma and resilience?
Perfect. So, I was born in Venezuela. My parents are actually Spanish, but as so many Spanish immigrants, they went to Venezuela and they created a living there in a family. So I was born in Venezuela. I was born in a country that was very different to what they experienced when they first moved into the country. So it was very dangerous, unsafe, a lot of poverty was driving insecurity and robberies and murders. So I grew up with that definitely in the background of my mind. I was never able to walk on the streets. I was never able to ride my bike on the streets. When I was 16 years old, my world up to that point really shifted beneath my feet. My father was murdered. And that was, at that point, it was extremely difficult. My father was my only friend, my best friend, the person that I spent pretty much all of my free time with. And when that loss happened, it destabilized me for many years. It was very difficult, and I thought, this is probably the most difficult thing that I will go through in my life, right? Like I will reflect on it in my 20s. I was younger, it's probably going to be the most difficult time of my life. And I turned out to be wrong because the most difficult time of my life, and I dare say the most difficult moment of my life, came about 20 years after my father's death when I was 36 years old. And I was actually able to start remembering my childhood.
Mm.
So, to expand on that, for most of my life, I actually didn't remember my childhood. Not good memories, not bad memories, just little snippets of information. And what I call memories sometimes were just family photos that I saw in albums, and somehow that became a memory, right? So, this is extremely common. But whenever I speak, I really make sure I mention that point because whenever I do, there is someone that goes like, huh, I don't remember my childhood. That's interesting. So I didn't know back then, and honestly, I didn't know until very recently, that when you don't remember your childhood or when you have large memory gaps, your family members remember, but you don't remember, it is a sign, a very strong indicator that something might have happened, and likely did, during your childhood that was so intense and so overwhelming and likely prolonged, not a one time thing, that your brain protected you from whatever happened. Now, with that, I don't want to scare people neither. And, I want to say when I'm talking about my case will be considered pretty extreme. So it doesn't mean that if you don't remember your childhood, you had terrible traumatic experiences that just totally destroyed you. It might be small things, because what trauma is perception, is how we experience what happens to us. So it might have been as simple as, every day you went to school, someone bullied you, and you have a low self-esteem when you're an adult because you were bullied by a classmate for 5 years. So it can be things like that. So I didn't remember my childhood. And, I had moved to the US after my father's murder. I tried to create the perfect life, striving to marry the handsome guy, then be successful, right? Have business, have money, do the things that people consider success in the society, travel the world, get the perfect Instagram photos, all of these things. But I was deeply empty and I was deeply unhappy. And worst of all, I didn't even know I was all those things.
Mm-hmm.
So I was just living in that state as if that was the normal life, the normal person that I was. So after I got my divorce, which is now 6 years ago, I really spiraled down even more because of a combination of beautiful factors that made my life really difficult, like it often happens, right? And it got to a point that it was so difficult, and I had gotten dependent on alcohol. I was living a life without any purpose, completely devoid of any values that I consider important. So it got so difficult that I actually traveled to Costa Rica and embarked on a journey that was very intimidating for me, as it is for many people, which is psychedelic treatments for trauma healing. But I didn't go to heal a trauma, because that's the key. I didn't know I had traumas. I went because I had no purpose. And recently I had gotten my heart broken. So I wanted to get over this heartbreak. And then is when my life really unraveled in a very dramatic way. So I could just rebuild it and end up here today after having written my book and, being able to talk openly about traumatic experiences from childhood and mental health.
Wow. Yeah, this is a great place to pause. And I think, if you're listening right now, just to take a breath for a moment, because I could feel myself getting a little bit like contracted with this, with your story, Melissa. I mean, I think I've seen this myself. A lot of people lose their memories, have these gaps of what happened in their childhood. And I think that can be really challenging to even want to address, right? It's almost like we have this, we're, we're cleaning the closet, and then all of a sudden we find this like secret room behind, it's like you move the suitcase, and all of a sudden there's like this secret room. And most of us do not want to go in the secret room, right? So I'm assuming that this then came up when you were doing plant medicine in Costa Rica, like you started to have the memories come back. Is that what happened?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, just to briefly talk about this plant medicine, just for people that are not familiar with it.
Yeah.
It's a plant medicine called ayahuasca. It's a plant. It literally is a plant. It's not a man-made chemical. So it has a lot of wisdom. It's a very smart plant. The way I explain it in simple terms is, I have this house plant behind me, and it has the intelligence of, say, a cockroach. And then you have ayahuasca, and has the intelligence of a dolphin. So it's just
Mm.
different levels of intelligence. And this plant, with the reactions that it causes in your brain and your body, it facilitates trauma healing and even physical healing. So when something traumatic happens in your life, a couple of things happen. First, your brain completely changes the way that it normally works. So your amygdala takes over the fear of the amygdala, which is a fear center of your brain, takes over the entire activity, and it actually shuts down your rational brain, and it decreases the activity in your memory center. So what these plants do is the opposite. They increase the activity in your rational brain and your memory center. But what key is that they also decrease the fear in your brain. So you're able to process difficult emotions and difficult occurrences without the fear of a 7-year-old. Now you're an adult. Hopefully you're in a safe environment if you really did your research, and you're able to process whatever, is coming up. So in my case, I did go to Costa Rica. Had never even smoked pot. Like I did not participate in any substances before, and I arrived in Costa Rica again with certain objectives. But the shamans say that the medicine gives you what you need, not
Yeah.
what you want, and that
Hold
was
on one
definitely.
second. So I'm curious, how did ayahuasca come into your awareness? Because this is, I think, where, you know, we might have some fear or, oh, we've heard these stories. And so how did you find out that, oh, this is something you should do and you should go to Costa Rica to do it?
Yeah, so I had been drinking the self-help Kool-Aid for a while. So I
Yeah.
was very active with the Tony Robbins community. So
Mm,
Tony Robbins was like the first big thing that I did for myself. Right after my divorce, I enrolled in one of his seminars. It was actually life changing. So I
mm,
decided to go full in into like their 1 year membership. So I had an
mm,
event every month for a year. This was right before COVID. So yes, I made many discoveries, and I was able to get myself with new habits and routines and less rules and better values and all the things that Tony advocates. However, COVID happens. And of course, you find yourself at home alone. And a lot of the things that I had learned, I couldn't sustain them
mm,
because they were here. Even though a lot of them were in my being and in my body, they were in my mind mostly. They were just things that I knew I needed to do, and new routines and push and mantras. And I advocate for all of that. It's an amazing addition to everything else you do. But in my experience, I just spiraled down. So I spiraled down. However, during my Tony Robbins years, I had heard people talk about ayahuasca.
mm,
However, I grew up in a very religious household, as many people. So I immediately will equate anything that sounded magical or extraordinary um, with black magic and demons. Like that was the
mm,
immediate, relationship between the two things. So I didn't really pay too much attention until it just came to my mind when I was at the bottom of like this self-deprecation lifestyle, and I knew I needed to do something radical. So then I booked my plane down to Costa Rica, and I just showed up in this place. Now I always tell people, yes, you're gonna have fears, and yes, it's something that works for a lot of people. However, there is no pressure for it to work for you. You don't have to drink ayahuasca. You don't have to do psychedelics to heal your traumas. However, if you're listening to this podcast, or if it's something that, in your body, you're like, wow, this is interesting. Maybe I want to learn more, then learn more and make an informed decision. Make a very informed decision, because troubles arise with these substances when people just go blindly. They're walking down to Loom, and someone is with a sign, come drink ayahuasca, and they just walk in like if they're, shopping for a new dress. And
yeah,
it's just
no,
definitely not something to be taken lightly.
yeah. I find this really interesting because I grew up in the 80s in California where there was this whole DARE program. And the DARE program was um, just against drugs, right? Like, don't do drugs. And there was this commercial of they cracked an egg and it was like, this is your brain on drugs, right? And so that got really ingrained in me. And then also having parents who were very anti drugs, and my mom was a nurse during the Vietnam War, and so she's like, she saw people like completely destroyed by drugs. I had kind of that same reaction towards doing ayahuasca. or anything, right? Because it was like, you don't do drugs. You don't do drugs. And I feel like now people are more open to it. People are more, I mean, we just had, this whole trial about MDMA becoming legalized for, for therapy and got shot down. But, I think there's a lot more opportunities, a lot more openness to it. And you bring up a really good point about you don't just go with Joe Schmo down the street. You need to do your research on going to a credible place. And so you went to Rhythmia, which is to you a credible place. Could you tell us about that?
Yes, for sure. Before I tell you about rhythmia, can
Sure.
I just mention something that I'm passionate about? And
Yeah.
that's making a distinction between the double standard that exists with drugs, right?
Yes.
So, we have these campaigns, right? Don't do drugs. However,
Mhm.
on the other side, we're bombarded with prescription medications. We're bombarded with them. Okay. So there is a huge double standard. Now, let me give you just a simple example that I really like. And some people might be like, oh, yeah, that makes sense. And some people might not like it, but it's the truth. So, what is a drug? It's a substance that you crave. It's a substance that when you don't have it, you want more. And the more you have it, the more you have it, the more you want. Okay. So
Mm.
now let's compare ayahuasca and sugar. Sugar. Sugar is one of the largest drugs that humanity has been plagued with, and one of the ones that causes more illnesses and highest mortality rate. So what does sugar do? You take sugar, you want more. You stop taking sugar, you want more. You get
Yeah.
withdrawal symptoms when you don't take sugar. Now, ayahuasca, for example, is not a party drug. You take
No,
ayahuasca, you don't say, hey, I'm going to take some ayahuasca and go dance down the street in the club. It's just
no.
absolutely not that type of medicine, right? So you take ayahuasca, you stop cold turkey. You don't get withdrawal symptoms. You don't have the sugar cravings. You take ayahuasca, the more you take, the less you need. The opposite of sugar. You take sugar every day, you're going to up it. And the coffee, all of a sudden, one spoon of sugar is not going to be enough. You're going to need two. So there is a double standard for what we consider drugs. And, it's an important distinction to make so people realize that sometimes we're fed some information, but it's up to us to analyze that information and to make sense of it, not to just accept it blindly as don't do drugs, but take a lot of sugar or take this prescription medication. So sorry, I just wanted to make that distinction.
Or alcohol. I mean, same
Oh,
thing. Like,
absolutely. Absolutely.
yeah,
Alcohol
I
is a
mean,
huge one. It's a huge one. But most people will think
huge one.
alcohol. But most people don't think sugar or coffee.
Exactly. Yeah. And it makes you wonder, and this goes back to what you were saying of growing up in a very Catholic, strict Catholic, and like you don't do anything magical, right? Like bruja, like bad, and which is which, and for those of you who don't know Spanish, and the same thing, it's like anything that might be alternative to the current system. Why is the government shutting down things that are actually helping people, right? But calling
Yeah.
them dangerous? So, I mean, that's a whole other conversation,
Oh,
right?
another one that I'm very passionate about too.
Yeah, I'd
But
love to just hear your thought on that because, I
okay,
mean,
perfect. So I'll tell you about that, and then
super
I'll answer
brief,
your
right?
question on rhythmia as well, because I skipped that
Yeah.
one for you.
Yep.
Yeah. So why are psychedelic medicines illegal? Well, the short answer is because they work, and governments don't like things that work.
Yep.
So if someone is growing mushrooms in their home and they bring a facilitator and they sit with respect, with intention, with a facilitator, and they sit and they take those mushrooms and they're battling ADHD, PTSD, and odds are that when the session is over after 4 or 5 hours, something will have positively changed because the brain gets rewired. So it's not only that you are numbing the symptoms, you actually rewire your brain. So what happens, that person after a 4 hour session might not want to reach for their cigarette. They might
Mhm.
not want to take that glass of wine that they always take when they come from work. So pharmaceutical industries are banking on people being sick. The medical model is banking on people being sick. So we're being fed foods that are making us sick. So then we can go to the doctor and then we can get prescription medication. So of course, pharmaceuticals and alcohol industries and tobacco industries are going to be paying for the red tape that is keeping all these substances illegal. So
Yeah.
it's a matter of money, really.
Yeah. And the same thing was happening back in like what, the 1600s, when there was all the witch hunting of the rise of the male Western doctor, or, before the former version, right? Before we have what we have today, but it was like that rising. And so it's like, let's shut down the herbalists. Let's shut down the midwives. Like, let's not let the women do their job. Let's, again, that switch to the model, right? Instead of the what's always been working, which is the natural way. And like you said, ayahuasca is natural. It's a very intelligent plant.
Absolutely. And, we call the plants the alternative medicine, but they're the original medicine.
Exactly.
So
Yes.
even our words have been fed by this outside system. So the beauty of these conversations that you and I are having is that there will be many people that will listen to it and they will be shifting their perception a little bit. They don't have to completely change their mind about what we're talking about, but curiosity is a beautiful quality that we can all develop. Just being curious. Now, there will be some people that will not like it at all. To those people, it's okay. But I invite you to just keep it in the back of your mind because, many times we are being advertised
Mm.
practices and products that we neither need nor are beneficial. And we go just like blind children and buy them. So it's time for us to make a stand for ourselves and to
Mhm.
actually question what we put into our bodies, what we put in our skin, the way that we live our lives. And that's the key.
Yeah. Back to rhythmia. Because I've heard, it's very, very large groups of people there. I've heard mixed reviews actually on rhythmia. I haven't been there myself. So I'd love to hear from you, your experience going there.
Yeah, so Rhythmia is a very special place for me
Mm.
personally, but also now that I've been in this path of personal growth and I've gone to so many different centers, I can see the value of Rhythmia.
Mm.
Yes, it is a very large group, sometimes 70 to 100 people. So people that are highly energetically sensitive might struggle in an environment that is that large. However, they do a really amazing job, are cleaning the space, really controlling the energies and making sure that you feel supported.
Mm.
Another thing that Rhythmia does that no other center does is they're a university. I call them. They're a university of ayahuasca. You arrive and you're immersed in a curriculum. Because most people that go to Rhythmia, they've never done anything. So they really tell you what to expect, how to handle it. They give you recommendations. You're in classes. Like when you're not drinking medicine, you're in classes or getting a massage or moving your body in yoga. But something that's really crucial about Rhythmia, in my opinion, is that it is attracting people like myself that will have never gone to the Amazons to drink ayahuasca.
Mhm.
They're going to Rhythmia because it's comfortable. It's a 5-star feel. It's a medically supervised center. So that,
Mm.
in my opinion, is valuable. Why? And it's not cheap. Okay. And that's also important because the people that are going there are generally those people that have really tried to be successful at life. They usually have money or they have a good job or they've made it somehow. And they're coming there because they're empty. They need more. So if and when they get their miracle, those people are the changers of the world. They have the resources. They have probably the life circumstances to be able to continue, like myself, to be able to continue to spread the word, to be able to continue to talk about mental health and healing. So there is definitely a very important spot in the world that is being fulfilled by Rhythmia.
Mm. I love that distinction because not every center is for every person. And this, what I really hear, and I haven't heard this before, so this is great information for me. In people asking me all the time, like, where should I go do ayahuasca? Is it's for the change makers, it's for the change agents, right? It's for people who are up to bigger things. And so if that's what you're looking for and that's the energy you want to be in, then rhythmia is for you. I love that. Yeah.
Well, yes, that is one way to look at it. Now, the way I see it is when you go to rhythmia, you're not a change. You're not thinking you're a change maker.
Yeah.
You're just a person that's successful in the world.
Mm-hmm.
You're
Mm-hmm.
successful in your field, whatever that is, and you can afford rhythmia, and you can show up at rhythmia and transform some aspect of your life, if not your entire life. And generally, what happens is once you find something that is fully transformational, you want to share it with others. Now, the difference is that most of the people that go to rhythmia, they are people that would be able to advance plant medicine if they chose to, if that's their path in life, because they usually, have a successful job, they have a successful life, versus other times, when you go to other places that are maybe more spiritual from the get-go, you're attracting clients that are already in that path. They're already meditating, they're doing yoga, they're already teaching people, but rhythm is attracting those that will have never thought that they will all of a sudden change their lives and become a mental health advocate.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah. So let's go back to your story of what did you discover? What were the things that you went into that secret room and what did you find? And what did you learn from
Yeah.
that?
So as you mentioned, the secret room, the
Hmm.
door to that secret room was open for me by the grace of the universe, God, whatever you believe in combination with this natural plant.
Yeah.
So, it was open, and I was able to start to get flashbacks of memories
Hmm.
from my childhood. And to say that it destroyed my life in an instant is honestly an understatement. It
Hmm.
destroyed every aspect of who I was, my identity, my values, the illusion of a life I had constructed for myself up to that point, the illusion of a childhood, the
Hmm.
illusion of a father, the
Hmm.
illusion of everything that I consider to be important to me up to that point. Now, something happened right after I started to get those flashbacks, and is that after fighting a long time, I finally surrender into acceptance.
Hmm.
And acceptance is one of the most important aspects of healing. And I talk about this a lot in my book. When you're fighting, you are either an internal battle or an external battle. It's impossible for you to heal your heart. You have to accept first whatever is happening in your life. It's already happening. There is no way around it. Whatever is happening, whatever is coming up during, psychedelic treatments, when you accept it, and by that, I don't mean that you condone it, that you're okay with it, that it doesn't hurt. No, it's simply you accept it, and then you're able to start healing. So once I accepted what was coming up, then I was able to continue to remember, to continue to understand what happened to me. And I really go into beautiful detail in my book, not only of that process of remembering and how it happens, but also because this was very important for me, and I know it is for people, how this can happen. Like, people often ask me, Melissa, how did you not remember what happened to you for 13 years of your childhood? How did you forget that? And I am the first person that asked that of
Hmm.
myself,
Hmm.
because I didn't understand how I was remembering all of these. And I knew it was real, because that's the thing with memories that are in those secret rooms. When they start coming out, and by the way, they don't come out as a normal memory, like, oh yeah, I went to the store and someone shot me. Like it doesn't come out in a rational way. Once they start coming out, then you really feel it in your entire body. Those full aha moments. Even though you have fear and you have questions, it's like, oh my gosh, I feel this is real. So of
Hmm.
course, it starts to come up. You accept it. It starts to, continue to develop in your mind. But then I also go into scientific research and detail in my book to explain to people how and why this happens. Because it's one thing for me to explain it and say, and the person that's listening to this or watching it, they're like, I still don't understand how this is possible. So, the way that the memories are stored in the brain, consolidated and retrieved when you just are going about your day is very different than when your nervous system is hijacked by fear. So when that happens, your memories are not stored in the same way. They're not consolidated or retrieved in the same way. So there is a saying that says your issues are in your tissues.
Mm-hmm.
And that is very true because traumatic memories get stored in your body. So when you're remembering them, it's not that you're all of a sudden you have this chronological movie playing on your mind and you can see everything that happened to you. It's a combination of an inner knowing and then your body reactions that are extreme. I mean, I'm not talking about I just felt a little discomfort. It's like I feel like I'm dying. My heart is exploding. My brain feels like it's going to explode, or my liver, the area on my stomach, is in intense pain, or my vagina, it's in terrible pain because trauma gets stored in different areas of the body. So all of these processes started to happen with my ceremony with ayahuasca in Costa Rica, and of course, it wasn't a one ceremony and I'm healed. It was one ceremony, and by the way, this happened, and it's up to you to continue to heal from it or to go and ignore it and try to hide from it. And that's a choice people have to make when they go through these experiences.
Okay, that's a really good point. Is first of all, you were ready and the door was open. Because I think that's like I'd love to hear your take on that of what had you what were the things that had you be ready for that secret door to open? And then that choice point of I don't want to ignore this. I choose to walk through this and heal. I think
Hmm.
there's two different pieces there, right? But whatever that is, I think is the so important when it really comes to healing and really stepping into the our embodied best version of ourself, right? Like we have to say yes, right? So yeah, I love to hear what happened for you there.
Yeah, so I like to make a distinction between being prepared and being ready. So
Yes.
when there is a test and you study, you're preparing for that test.
Hmm.
But the day of the exam comes and you're a nervous wreck. And you show up, even though you're prepared, you're not ready. So you're in fear, you're stressed out, and then you can either pull yourself together or flunk the test because you're not ready for it. So it's something similar that happens with these treatments. I was prepared. What allowed me to prepare myself? Well, I have been searching for something. With
Mm.
my Tony Robbins years, I
Hmm.
knew deep inside that there was something I needed to work on because I wanted to have a fabulous life and I was far from it. So
Hmm.
I was reading books, I was going to seminars, I was, trying to learn how to meditate, trying to learn how to do breath work. So I was doing all these things. And then I was being curious. That's part of the preparation. Like I got curious about ayahuasca, so I went. Now, was I ready for what came up? Oh my gosh, I don't think anybody will ever be ready. But
Mm.
I had the opportunity to, in that moment, make a decision. And I think, there is a part in my book that I really like that is just stating that until we are faced with undescribable adversity, we can never really know for sure how we will react. But on that day, I realized that I had, even though I didn't know it, I had a warrior soul. Because even though I
Mm.
wasn't ready, I became ready in that instant and I had to make a choice. So, I will say anybody that goes into a treatment that is a psychedelic treatment, that is an accelerated path to healing, because that is what it is, you will be nervous and you might not be ready. But
Yeah.
prepare yourself. How do you prepare yourself? First and foremost, check why you want to do this treatment. Is it because your husband wants you to do it? Is it
Mhm.
because your friends are going down and they're pressuring you to do it? Is it because you just happened to be walking down the street and you saw a sign? Because those whys, those reasons are not enough for you to go into a potentially life-changing experience. Second, research, research, research. You really have to figure out the place that you're going to go to, the facilitators, make sure that it resonates with you. I really like to make the recommendation that only go to a place when you know someone, and hopefully more than one person who went to that place, and they can tell you about it. So that's how you become prepared. And then once you're going through the experience, the key aspect is you just have to understand that something might come up that will potentially change your life. And you got to be ready to make that change if necessary. If you go with strict expectations, thinking, I just want to talk to God. If you don't talk to God, you're going to be very disappointed. Or I just want to be happy. If you don't come out of there being happy, you're going to be very disappointed. So it's just, prepare yourself, but also understand that you will never be ready because it's the unexpected. Nobody readies themselves for something that is unpredictable. And that's the beauty of it as well. There's an element of faith.
I'm curious. You said you have a warrior, you got to discover that you have a warrior soul. And I'm wondering if also what prepared you was the traumatic experience of losing your dad at 16. And, it's like the universe isn't going to give us more than we can handle. Right. And so it's like, it's almost like having that, you already had gone through something pretty horrific and you built some resilience from losing your dad at a young age. Would you agree?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Let's
So,
talk about resilience too. Yeah, go ahead.
yeah, so resilience is a superpower. It's a
Mm.
superpower that is like a muscle. It has to be built. It has
Hmm.
to be built through life experiences. In the book, I mentioned that I didn't know it when I arrived at Costa Rica, but all the difficulties I have faced up to that point were pop quizzes,
Mm.
preparing me for what was to come. So the big exam, the big exam, to pass the board happened to start at Costa Rica. And notice, I don't say it happened at Costa Rica, it just started in Costa Rica. And honestly, I'm still in it. It's a long exam. But all the experiences we go through, they are meant to prepare us in life so we can, again, be resilient. What is resilience? Is the ability to bounce back. It's like a protective
Mm.
shield that we carry where, some problem comes and we're able to protect ourselves and continue walking. And when we do that enough, we develop the resilience muscle. So in my case, once I started to write my book, I started not with my birth, but I started with my parents' birth, because we carry ancestrally not only the eye color and the hair color, we carry what they went through and what their ancestors went through. So I invite the reader to also do that in their own lives. But then writing the book allowed me to recount all the experiences that helped me build resilience. And, starting with my eldest brother passed away when I was 5. So for 2 years, I
Mm.
didn't have my mother with me. She was taking care of my elder brother.
Yeah.
Then I was severely sexually abused for 13 years, which I didn't remember. Then my father died when I was 16 years old. Then I had to move to the US and start over. Then I went and got married, and it was a very, very difficult marriage. It was not a fairy tale at all from any angle that you look at it. So all of these things allow me to be prepared. So when I showed up in Costa Rica, and it was the time of my reckoning, really, to just understand why I acted like I acted and why I was struggling in intimacy, in relationships with children, in every aspect of life. Then at that time, I was prepared because I had developed resilience.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's like you had the warrior soul that kept giving you these experiences, and then that resilience then allowed you to choose the healing path. Because
Correct.
most people will just be like, nope, close that door, and bypass. And we see that
Yeah.
all the time. But like real healing is really going to the depths of it, which you have done. So I'm just celebrating you and your journey. It's incredible to hear and just be in this conversation with you. Tell us, or actually, you have your book. We can see your book, and then we'll put the link in the show
Yeah,
notes.
I can get it. It's sitting over here. One second.
Okay, here's the book.
Yes. So here it is. And it's called Hidden Memories. Discover what's blocking you from life and love. And something that I want to say about the book is, and that you mentioned, we all have the capacity to be resilient. We all have the inner fire. So this book is a reminder of that. Because yes, there is my story, and it's a compelling story, but it's a mix between a memoir and a self-help book. Because it's inviting the reader, it's inviting you to find the ways that you are magic, to find how you have built resilience, to find compassion for yourself, to find courage within yourself, to remove any fears and blockages that you might have, to answer questions of, healing alternative healing paths. So that's really the value of the book. My story is entertaining. You will shed a tear here and there. I know I do still. But more than that, is the whole purpose of it is for you to, as the reader, for you to really see it as a mirror for your own life.
Beautiful. Well, our final question to wrap us up is, what does it mean to be a brave woman?
It means not to lack fear, but to use fear as a fuel to carry you through the difficult times, the challenging times. And most importantly, to me, being brave, it means honoring yourself and loving yourself unconditionally, because that is the bravest thing that you can do in a society that constantly shames us, tells us to not love ourselves, tells us to diminish ourselves. So the biggest act of bravery is the one that you can do by loving yourself.
Thank you so much, Melissa, for your story and inspiration today. And thank you, everyone, for tuning in. This is the Brave Woman Podcast, and we can't wait to see you for the next episode.
Amazing. Thank
You just listened to this show. I'd love for you to leave the Brave Woman Podcast an honest review. Reviews help podcasts like this one grow, making it more possible for me to devote my time, energy, and money to its production. If you take a screenshot of your review and email it to support@sistershipcircle.com, we'll send you one of our archetype activations as a thank you gift. Thank you so much for your support. I really appreciate it.